Good evening. I want to call to order this meeting of the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners meeting. Welcome. We're happy to have all of you watching with us tonight. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Police Chief Bill Carter.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Our invocation tonight from the Wendell Council of Churches is from Wendell Baptist Church, and we're going to hear from Benny Collins. Good evening, Mr. Collins.
Good evening. Everybody hear me okay?
We sure can.
All right. It's truly an honor to have this opportunity tonight to provide the invocation, and we send greetings from the Wendell Council of Churches and Wendell Baptist Church. If you would join me in the invocation. Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this wonderful community, this town that we live in. Lord, we just thank you for this wonderful day that we've had. We thank you for all the changing colors, the season that we're in. Lord, we just ask for healing in our country, healing worldwide, for there's so many diseases and the current pandemic. Lord, we just ask that for guidance and Lord, for that all of our leaders, especially our local leaders, continue to govern and make decisions showing kindness and love and compassion for all of our neighbors, Lord, and we just ask that you continue to bless them and bless our town. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mr. Benny Collins. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Are there any adjustments to the agenda? If not, motion to approve.
Commissioner Luke's motion to approve the agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda. Let's go down the roll. We're out of order a little bit tonight. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, thank y'all. All right, our public comment period, I want to talk about that for just 1 second. We haven't had very many people sign up, so I wanted to just give everybody a quick reminder that we're organizing our public comment period in advance. You can still make public comment just like you have been able to before. All you need to do is to contact the clerk by the Friday before our meeting. We meet the second and fourth Monday of every month. So the Friday before that, you can contact her and make arrangements to submit your comments in writing, and they'll be read aloud in the meeting, or you can make arrangements to call into the meeting and speak. No matter what, in either case, you still have the regular 3 minutes to speak, but I urge you to call in or write in if you have something that you'd like to say. We love to hear from you. We had no one tonight. On the consent agenda, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
All right, Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right. Next, item number 4 is our recognitions, reports, and presentations. We'll move into item 4A, our Americans with Disabilities Act, which is our ADA transition plan presentation. And we're going to hear from our HR Administrator, Debbie Kennedy. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here to talk to you about ADA compliance and transition. We're just going to dive right in. All right. Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA. What is ADA? Americans Disabilities Act of 1990, or ADA, is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. It also affords protections against discrimination towards people with disabilities, similar to those of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which made it illegal to discriminate against anyone based on race, color, sex, national origin, age, and religion. ADA also requires covered employers to provide reasonable accommodations. And it also imposes accessibility requirements that guarantees, that those that are disabled are able to participate in our programs, our activities, and services. Can we get this little thing? Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And by reasonable accommodations, we mean, it could be something simple. For example, the town doesn't have to do any structural changes just to accommodate ADA, such as we wouldn't tear out a wall or build a building, but we could do something like move a service or a program to a facility that is already accessible or something of that nature. There are 5 titles of ADA. Some are public and some are private, geared toward private sector. And those that we want to focus on tonight, or in general as a town, we want to focus on Title I and Title II. Title I prohibits discrimination against persons with disabilities in employment. Title II prohibits discrimination for state and local governments, and it requires that we make our facilities accessible, our services, and that everything is accessible and that we provide to the disabled, that they have accessibility to our services, our programs, and so on. There are benefits to becoming ADA compliant. One is that it promotes inclusion of individuals with disabilities, and it avoids alienation. We don't want to alienate anyone. It creates and maintains a safe environment while ensuring accessibility to our facilities, our infrastructures, for disabled employees and citizens of the town. And then number 3, it provides a welcoming and inviting place to live, to work, and to play for all. So what steps have we taken so far? This is where we currently are. We've selected an ADA coordinator, Debbie Kennedy, Human Resources Administrator, AKA me. We've developed an RFP to obtain an outside consultant. The RFP we expect to release on tomorrow, which is October 22nd, so that we can solicit consultant proposals. How will we utilize our outside consultants? In several ways. To perform assessments, as you can see, to examine our facilities, our infrastructures, to review town policies, procedures, and practices and services, to review communication policies, review employee training procedures. We expect our consultant to be able to do a departmental review for each department that the town has, to identify accessibility gaps, and to make sure that there's no limitations on our communications for those that are disabled. We expect them to develop an ADA transition plan, which would include methods to remove barriers and propose a schedule for completion. We also anticipate that the outside consultant would recommend to the town officials any immediate steps to take to avoid harm, to avoid risk to disabled individuals and others. And so there are project deliveries that we expect as well. Schedules, technical analysis and data management, final reports, establish grievance procedures, help us establish notices to public, governance, and ongoing ADA compliance monitoring and plan revisions yearly. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Kennedy?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. excited to be getting this moving.
Yes, thank you.
Got it? Right now, item 4B is the Hollybrook Road Park Site Project Schedule Presentation, and we're going to hear from Parks and Rec Director Jeff Pulaski.
Long time no see. Just glad to be back. So with the fiscal year that we're currently in, it was appropriated to, by the Hollybrook Road property for future park development, which was recommended through the Wendell Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And also in the 2021 budget, the site-specific master plan was put into that budget, and we're currently reaching out to engineers on that already as scheduled. So I wanted to come and share the next steps for developing that Hollybrook property into what will soon be a neighborhood park. But first, exactly what is a neighborhood park? What makes a difference from other parks, community parks, regional parks? A neighborhood park offers the public a convenient source of recreation while serving as a social focus point of neighborhoods. These are usually walkable parks. They are usually smaller in size, generally up to 15 to 20 acres. Also offers passive and active recreation for all age groups. So usually these are neighborhoods that are tucked away in these neighborhoods that encourage people to get out and walk or bike to these neighborhoods, having much less car traffic like we do, say, at Wendell Park. So this park, as soon as we started talking about this property, it instantly, in my head, becomes a perfect part of candidate property. That's the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant that we did receive 3 or 4 years ago for the Wendell Park improvements. And so a little bit about the PARTIF. The PARTIF was started in 1994. It is a state of North Carolina grant. They award this grant. It is a 50-50 grant annually, so it covers essentially half the cost of your project, up to $500,000. They're used for parks, public beach accesses, and also they use some of that money to improve state parks as well. So they take a portion of that money, usually about 35%, and set it away from local government, and they use that money for beaches and state. And 65% generally goes into what I would be applying for. So the calendar for the PARTIF cycle is up on the board, as you can see. But generally in October, which this actually happened Friday, I think, Mark. I got the email Friday that the North Carolina Division of Parks and Recreation sent out an announcement package to inform local governments that the PARTIF money is available. Late October, they generally put out a video that helps educate you on how to write this grant and what it's for, and just to help people get a better understanding about that grant. A new step from when I've written in the past, due April the 1st, is you can submit your drafts to your Recreation Resource Services officer, giving them a month to look at it, give their critique of it, get it back to you in time to send it back to them by the May 3rd deadline. That is a new step, which I think is an amazing step, because generally you're kind of sending it on the due date and hoping that it's going to score well. And then late summer, early fall, the Parks and Recreation Authority will get together with all the applications, and they generally send that meeting date out later. We are encouraged to show up to those meetings. They do them right there live and in front of everyone. And that's when you find out if you are awarded a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. So once a PARTIF grant is announced, we can begin writing that grant. The application is out there. I've already got it on my computer. I've already started looking at it. They do change slightly from year to year. They change the point system. They change some of the criteria that's in the grant. It's a lengthy grant. It's not a very fun one to write, but very beneficial, especially to towns like Wendell. They're growing very rapidly and can't quite afford to keep pace with the growth. So we are a prime candidate, and they really like towns like ours to apply. We tend to score very well. Part of that is like I was mentioning before, is a site-specific master plan. I'm already meeting with some engineers that we've worked with in the past to get some quotes in. A site-specific master plan will develop a plan just for this park only. It's not like the big comprehensive master plan that we just had finished. This one is where we get the map that you probably have seen in my office that shows where the slides are going or shows where a walking track is going. So we're currently meeting with engineers on that, and once we decide on who we'll go with, we'll get the ball rolling on that with them as well. Those engineers, they provide the environmental review, the part of color-coded site plan for the property, as well as an estimate on the project cost. Generally, they're going to tell you that they like the $250,000 to $300,000 grants because they can give out more of those grants. They like to spread the money out as much as they can. If you're going in there asking for $500,000, it better be really good. So we really trying to stay in that $250,000, $300,000 range as a half project cost. Points are awarded based on a scoring system developed by that Parks and Recreation Authority. Some of these points are based on having that comprehensive master plan, having that site-specific master plan, holding public meetings, having a full-time staff, etc. There's just a lot of points that you can get out there. So how are grants selected? Used to in the day, the highest points getter, they got the money. It's not that way anymore, so the points kind of get you on the table now. The criteria for this is based on your scoring system, geographic distribution for projects across the state. They like to spread it out, mountains to the coast. The presence or absence of other funding sources. They want to know that you have the money that you're asking for. Are you getting it from other grants? Are you getting it from our local budget? The population of the applicant plays into getting this. The level of compliance with prior grant agreements. We scored well on our last grant. We finished on time. We finished on budget. It scores well for the next time around. During the process, one of the people up there asks for everyone that's up there, had they had a part of? Did they finish on time? Did they finish on budget? She asks it every year. The level of compliance. Let's see, the grant amount being requested by the applicant. I kind of went into that a little bit already. And then the part of funds available also play a part in that. Some years it's really up. Some years it's really down. So it just really kind of depends how much money is available. They have not told us how much is available yet this year, so I don't know. Last year, I think only 16 programs in the state received money. So that kind of gives you an idea of kind of what you're looking at. So after that early or late summer, fall meeting, if you are awarded, you begin to implement it into your budget. So that would be, we would find out in fall of 2021, so we could plan to budget for this project in 2022, 2023. So it's not something that's pressing on us, but it will be here. You don't have to pay for a part of grant if it is received in one budget year. You do have 3 years to pay for that budget, to pay for that grant. I don't encourage 3 years. It loses its shine. People get excited, and then it seems to stretch out a little too long. But that's kind of up to the budgeting gurus, and that's not me. So I think this project is a prime candidate for part if we have some things that the master plan has told us. I don't want to put them out there yet because I don't want people getting excited and then that doesn't happen. I do want to meet with our Recreation Resource Services girl, Jen Beadle. She is in Raleigh. Let her look at the master plan. Let her and I go over it together to make sure I'm on the same page that she thinks that we should go. You can write a grant 15 different ways and only receive the money for one of those 15. So I'm not going to put it out there what I'm looking at. I want to meet with her first. I am batting 1,000 on part of grants in the past. I don't plan on that changing this year. But I'm excited about it. I think it's a good project. If anyone has any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Pulaski about the park?
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Commissioner Deloach, you're batting 1,000, so we hope you didn't just jinx that, right? Multiple applications, or do we only submit one per? Okay. And
One
then-
application.
And then 16 were awarded last year. How many submitted?
I don't know that. I would guess 50-ish.
Okay. Just out of
Generally,
curiosity.
yeah.
Excellent.
I'm very excited about this park, this neighborhood park. It's a big step towards the implementation of our comprehensive park
Yes.
plan. So it's exciting to see things moving that we talked about. We figured out what we wanted to do and see that happening. So
Yes.
thank you for that. It's exciting.
Okay.
And there is a little pressure.
And I have a little more time this year. I did
Well,
last time.
yeah, you do have a little more time this time, but a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
Because now we know. All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, let's move into our public hearings. Due to the current state of emergency, we've made some accommodations to allow the public to participate in the public hearing since there's no attendance at Town Hall. The first is no board action on public items. If they occur on public hearing items that occur in a virtual meeting, and they will be continued, and the public will have 24 hours after the end of the meeting to provide additional comments. So you have 24 hours after starting the end of the public hearing to submit your comments if you wish. You can also submit written comments if you arrange that with the clerk prior to 5 p.m. this past Friday, same as our regular public comment. And you can do that also by calling in with the clerk. You can make those arrangements. So we've done everything we can to give the public an opportunity to participate. And for a public hearing, you get 5 minutes just like normal instead of 3 for public comment. Okay, item 5A is a public hearing on a contiguous annexation for 2 parcels totaling 19.64 acres. And it's broken up into 2 pieces, and they're identified as PIN number 17839568646 and 178386960, and they're located at 0 South Selma Road and 0 South Hollybrook Road. And we're going to hear from Assistant Planning Director Brian Coates. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The first public hearing before you this evening is for contiguous annexation for 2 parcels totaling roughly 19.64 acres. They make up the rezoning on your agenda. The next item is roughly a little 22.5 acres. 2 of these two parcels are not part of our current city limits. So the request before you tonight is to hold a public hearing for the annexation. No decision can be made at this meeting. The decision will be considered on Monday, November 9th of 2020. Item summary, Lucius Jones is the applicant, submitted an annexation request for the 19.64 acre portions of the parcels located at 0 Selma Road and 0 South Hollybrook. The properties are currently located within the town of Wendell's ETJ and are zoned RA and R3. The applicant in the next item has submitted a request to rezone the parcels to residential 4. Impact to town services. The proposed annexation area would require services from the town's police, public works, and parks and rec department if annexed and developed. Secondary service impacts will be incurred by other town departments that support the operational departments. Property is already served by the Wendell Holmes Fire District. Water and sewer are readily available to the property and provided by the Wendell service area through the City of Raleigh Utilities Department. Impacts are dependent on the proposed use, density, and design of development and subject to approvals for utility allocations and land use. And I can field any questions you have on the annexation.
All right. Are there any questions from the board? All right, we'll open the public hearing. Is there an applicant?
Yep. Yes, we are,
Okay, you can, go ahead.
yeah, I'm here, we can answer any,
Okay.
but
Are there any questions for the applicant from the board then? All right, we had no one signed up to speak from the citizen comments tonight. I'm gonna give you one more chance. Are there any comments from the board?
Madam Mayor, I've got one question for the applicant.
Sure.
Commissioner Joyner.
Okay.
This looks like a natural, it looks like an extension of the rest of Deerfield. Do you see any ways that this is gonna, do you see any way, am I missing anything? Do you see anything that's gonna be different? Or do you expect this is probably like an extension of the neighborhood?
it's absolutely good, and especially with the, Hollybrook Road Park. It ties right in with the comprehensive plan that Wendell has, and we'll have everything, have thoroughfares, so it'll be connected, and sidewalks, and all of the criteria will be met.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, that's all I had.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
I just have one question, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
And for this, for the applicant, I'm trying to look at the map to make sure, but is there access to 231 from this, development?
No, there is not access, from 231, but there are two other access points that will tie in with what is already developed. On Commander Drive and Dare Crest, or Hoy Holly.
You good, Commissioner Lutz?
Can you put the parcel map back up there, please?
Two spots right here, right here, and right here. There's two spots. There are two spots, yeah. It's right up the street from my house.
Why, it looks like there's access over to 231. Why wouldn't there
Because-
be an extension of the intersection at Lions Club Road?
But it wouldn't line up, and there's also a Class A stream and a sewer lift pump, which would impede or connect it with Club Road.
To clarify.
I didn't catch all of that,
Yeah,
but.
I can't
Yeah,
hear what she's saying.
Applicant, your phone is kind of choppy, if you can look at your signal. And to clarify what we heard was that directly across from Lions Club Road, there's a Class A stream, and a sewer lift pump station right at that location. There's a topographic change down to a stream and a pump station.
That is absolutely correct.
Any other comments from the board? All right, we'll close the public hearing subject to the receipt of additional comment from the public for the next 24 hours. Move to item 5B. It's a zoning map amendment request to rezone approximately 22.50 acres located within the parcels addressed as 330 South Selma Road, 0 South Selma Road, 0 South Hollybrook Road, and identified by PIN number 1783974, 4265, 1783956, 17838588479, and 178386960 from rural agricultural to residential 2 and residential 3 to residential 4. Mr. Coates.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. So this public hearing is for the actual zoning of those two parcels in the previous annexation and two other parcels that are within our city limits currently. The four subject parcels total roughly 90 acres. However, only 22.5 acres are being proposed as part of this rezoning. This rezoning is not part of a conditional district, and when you look at an R4 zoning district, we have to look at all permitted uses and all requirements of the UDO. The intent of the rezoning is to develop Phase 5. Although it's not a requirement of the rezoning, you can see the applicant has provided a site plan. As the mayor mentioned, these parcels are located at various addresses along South Selma and Hollybrook, and the parcels are listed. Current zoning, the part that's in our ETJ are RA and R3. The R2 parcel is already in our city limits. The applicant's requesting an R4 zoning. The property owner is Lucius Jones, United Realty and Construction Company. The applicant is Lucius Jones. The zoning around that area, residential 2 to the north. The south is R4 Conditional District, the Fred Smith project that was before you a few months ago. There's also some additional RA land as it's sitting in our ETJ. And then to the west is residential R3 and R2. The zoning districts are variety. The RA district allows for a minimum lot size of 1 acre. R2 allows for 15,000 square foot lots. R3 is a minimum lot size of 10,000. And the R4 zoning is 6,000 square feet. The site plan that the applicant submitted, the project would have to be submitted for TRC review and work through that process and comply with all regulations that are in our UDO. Comprehensive plan does show this area as S4 controlled growth, which is where we are close to thoroughfares and at key crossroads location. This is where the majority of a community's new growth should occur. Typically, it's envisioned the community as a traditional neighborhood, which includes neighborhood serving commercial, civic uses with a mix of housing type. The applicant's proposing single family or residential, and it is in compliance with the comp plan. You can see the areas S4 in the comp plan, framework plan. Planning board recommendation at their September 21st, 2020 meeting, the planning board voted 7-1 to recommend approval of the requested zoning map. Statement of plan consistency and reasonableness. The requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the recommended uses outlined in the comprehensive plan for the S4 sector and is reasonable to be consistent with adjoining properties. And the applicant has provided justification to build roughly 53 residential homes, Phase 5 of Groves at Deerfield, take advantage of the water and sewer that's available, and there are some stub streets that will have access to this property. Can answer any questions that you may have.
All right, let's open the public hearing. Any questions from the board?
I have one, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the applicant. If this was a continuation of the previous development of Groves of Deerfield, why were y'all looking for a change in rezoning from R3, looks like on the old area, to R4?
Yes, we have received a lot of feedback, and from what we are hearing, the lot size currently is a little too large for what people are wanting to maintain on a daily basis. It's essentially, 40 extra feet of backyard to maintain and keep cut is something that's kind of not as appealing to a lot of people out there.
And you're hearing that feedback from members in their current Groves of Deerfield?
We are, and also, yes, purchasers of the homes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? All right, we have 2 people who have submitted public comment tonight to be read in. I'm going to have the clerk read those aloud now.
The first written public comment for item 5B was provided by Mr. James Bengal, co-owner. The address that he gave was Oldest House in Deerfield. Mr. Bengal writes, I almost didn't bother commenting on this development because really what's the point of a comment period when the bulldozers are already running and the trees were ripped out 4 years ago? I can hardly wait for the chorus of miter saws and nail guns as 21 acres of old-growth hardwoods are converted into another scorched earth subdivision just like the ones we moved here to get away from. I also wonder what the owners of those grand old homes on Wendell Boulevard will think when the increases in traffic make it necessary to annex a few feet of their front yards to widen the road. It's a fact, when you add people, you add traffic, and while the parkway out in Wendell Falls is nice and wide, ask the people who have to turn left off Eagle Rock onto it how much that helps them. Then take a look at the clear cutting happening just below Maggie Court and ask yourself how long those 2 lanes that the rest of the parkway has will be enough to handle the extra load. Will all that work on the sewer system and upgrade to handle the new demand on that infrastructure? I sure hope so. Being a town mouse, though, none of this is new to me. The value of my property will go up somewhat as the people who can't manage real estate prices in Raleigh start their inevitable migration to someplace more affordable. I have to wonder how the poor people who are too afraid to walk the streets of Wendell unarmed will feel once that influx begins. Why, there could be liberals moving in, for pity's sake. If you build it, they will come. That's hyperbolic, obviously, but the point is that if you don't consider what makes people want to live here in the first place when making development decisions, then you run a high risk of losing everything about your community that matters. I drive up the parkway and it occurs to me that I could be anywhere on the eastern edge of Raleigh where old family farms are being converted into modern-day tract housing. Take a ride through the South Hall area off of Buffalo Road in Raleigh and see what your future has in store. If you want an upscale version, take a ride out to Falls River north of Durant Road and see what a, quote, planned community looks like. 6 floor plans and 1 tree out in the front yard, all of a specific type with only approved exterior paint colors and no 2 consecutive houses in the same color. How well do you think that will play here? I have lived the vast majority of my 60 years in Wake County, and that makes me old end to remember when Nightdale wasn't another name for Strip Mall of America and Cary was a quiet bedroom community of about 10,000. I've seen this movie and most of the sequels, and while growth is inevitable, it doesn't have to be chaotic or mutually exclusive with having naturally occurring trees. And no, in case you're wondering, I have no illusions that my opinion will change anything. Looking out the window of my COVID-created home office, I see ample evidence to the contrary. The thin line of trees that still exist because they've on our side of the line can't scream out the naked earth beyond them. I suppose I should be glad that the wildfire in waiting left behind when they bulldozed the trees and left them lying there will finally be cleared away, though. When you ask what we think after the work's already underway, it's pretty obvious that any commentary is strictly for show. And that ends Mr. Bengal's written public comment. The second written public comment was provided by a Wendy Long, 20 Canterbury Court, Wendell, North Carolina. She writes, I would just like to clarify, my partner's reference to, quote, liberals is just a jab at how terrifying it has been to live here as liberals ourselves, and how unwelcome we have felt as such, especially with the giant Trump flag flying perpetually from one of your historic homes on Wendell Boulevard. But that is beside the point. For the record, I agree with every word James has written. And that's the end of Wendy Long's public comment and the public comment period for 5B.
All right, thank you. All right, one more time, are there any additional questions from the board for Mr. Coates or for the applicant? Make sure everyone virtually has had an opportunity to ask any questions. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, subject to the receipt of the comments that we will, could receive for the next 24 hours. All right, item 5C is a public hearing on a zoning map amendment to rezone approximately 1.5 acres located within the parcels addressed as 353 East 4th Street and 0 Wendell Boulevard and identified by PIN number 1784807415 and 1784808514 from residential 3 to neighborhood center. Mr. Coates.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This public hearing is to rezone approximately 1.5 acres from residential 3 to neighborhood center. The action for tonight is to hold the public hearing on the proposed zoning map amendment. No decision can be made at this meeting. The decision will be considered on Monday, November 9th, 2020. The applicant is requesting to rezone 2 parcels located within town limits that are currently R3. The applicant's requesting that is not part of a conditional district. The intent of the rezoning is to develop townhomes. This property is in the same block as the 4th Street Townhome project, which was approved earlier this spring for some townhomes nearby. The type of rezoning allows for the permitted uses within the neighborhood center zoning district. The mayor went over the location. It's in the block between 4th Street and Wendell Boulevard and North Selma and North Hollybrook. Current zoning is R3. Area of the request is 1.50 acres. It's already in our corporate limits. Property owner is Lucius Jones. The applicant is also Lucius Jones. So some nearby zoning. North of the property is R3. South is manufacturing and industrial. To the east is R3. In the west is R3 and an NC conditional district that was approved earlier this year. Here's the zoning map. That hatched area is where those 9 townhomes were approved earlier this year. The yellow is all the R3 that's remaining in that block. The comprehensive plan does define this area as S6 infill redevelopment sector. Areas that are already urbanized and well served with infrastructure. They're the most efficient, most attractive areas for redevelopment of underutilized sites or infill of vacant parcels. Appropriate uses are neighborhoods, downtown, single-family, multifamily residential, commercial uses, retail and office, civic, and some light industrial. Neighborhood centers are mixed-use activity centers surrounding neighborhoods and have higher density housing. The village town center, which this area is also classified as appropriate for the area's highest density housing. You can see the area highlighted is in the orange area, the infill redevelop, and near that where that white arrow is pointing. Public hearing on a request to rezone was held. The planning board looked at the item, voted 8-1 in favor. The request zoning map amendment is consistent with the recommended uses outlined in the comprehensive plan for the S6 sector, neighborhood center, and town center, and is consistent with adjacent uses in zoning districts. I can field any questions that you have. The applicant did provide a justification statement. They would like to build some townhomes similar to what was proposed a few parcels away. The applicant does have a special use permit on that site to develop 24 senior living apartments. However, the current proposal of NC zoning to allow townhomes, the applicant feels would be the best use of the land. I can field any questions that you have for the rezoning.
All right, we'll open the public hearing. Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Coates?
I have a few, Mayor.
Okay.
Just for clarification, Brian,
Commissioner Lutz.
this will be for townhomes, not for senior living, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then, when we had the other rezoning earlier back with the other townhomes, do you remember any conditions we made regarding, buffering with neighbors at all?
There was a 15-foot buffer between that property and the historic district properties.
Okay.
And then at the meeting, the condition got extended along the rear property line, the entire length. But it was only in the corner to start with, based on SHPO.
Okay. And then we don't have a site plan or anything for this project at all?
We do not know. In a regular rezoning, we don't get a site plan.
Okay.
It is key to note that between NC and R3, there is a type A 10-foot buffer that would be required.
And what is that type A buffer?
Type A, give me 1 second. I believe it's 1 tree every 40 feet and a shrub every 10, but give me 1 second.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, between neighborhood center and R3, it's a type C buffer, so it's 10 feet, and it's 1 tree every 40 feet and 1 shrub every 8 feet along the boundaries.
So that's what's required now?
That's what would be required when they submit a
Okay.
development plan. Yep, if this rezoning is approved.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? For Mr. Coates or for the applicant? All right, we'll close the public hearing, subject to the receipt of any additional comments for the next 24 hours. And we're going to move into our administrative items. Section 6. Item 6A is a decision on a non-contiguous annexation petition A-2004 for 61.43 acres located at 1129 Edgemont Road, 1213 Edgemont Road, 0 Edgemont Road, 0 US Highway 64 East, and 0 Merganser Road. We're going to hear from Planning Director Nikki Jones.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. First, I'll remind the board that a public hearing was held on this item Monday, October 12th, 2020. And as another reminder, the Lyles family has submitted, as the applicant has submitted this for an annexation. It's approximately 70 acres. And tonight, this item is up for decision. Again, just a quick reminder, refresher, these parcels, these 6 parcels are currently in Wake County zoning, and they're zoned residential 30, and they would like to come into the town zoning district, R4 Conditional District. If annexation is approved, it would require services from the town such as police, fire, public works, parks and rec, those sorts of things. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Jones?
Is there any update on the rezoning issue?
Yeah.
There is. We have, in your packet, the applicant has revised the conditions on the rezoning, which is the item after this.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we had that discussion at the last meeting.
Well, since we're all here, can you tell us about the revisions? Is that inappropriate now? Yeah,
I can?
yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. So, a couple of the revisions. So we heard conversation around slab on grade. And a revision in the conditions were essentially a monolithic slab, a raised slab, 8 inches above grade. Vinyl siding, the thickness of which would be 0.046 opposed to the standard 0.040. And all homes to have a minimum of 20% of the front facade to be either brick, stone, or a vinyl accent material. Additionally, all homes to have 2-car garages with garage doors having decorative hardware.
Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
members of the board, this is another one of those tandem annexation rezoning requests, and as you know, when these come along, the applicants don't want the annexation unless the rezoning's to be approved. So typically you would consider these, you can't act on the rezoning unless you first approve the annexation.
Right.
So you need to take the annexation issue first. If it is denied, then there would be no action on the rezoning. We just had this in a similar situation a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
If the annexation is approved, then you could act on the rezoning. But again, the applicant, as is typical in these, does not want the annexation unless you intend to approve the rezoning as well.
I have one question, excuse me, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you explain to me again the kind of what this monolithic slab is? I mean, is this just a basic, your standards, raised slab home?
Yes, sir.
Okay. They're not saying any kind of wrap or anything on there, just, okay.
Stucco around it.
All right, thank you.
Standard.
Any other questions from the board, comments?
I'll just say, I'm sorry, Jay, to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I'll just say my piece real quick. My comment last time at the last meeting was, we had had a couple of these coming through lately with different, conditional districts. While the homes at Edgemont is a very nice neighborhood, I still feel like that, with this neighborhood being adjacent to it, the raising the standard of the homes, since that neighborhood has been there for several years, would be a good thing for the town. I think the way the town is moving. I still think, you know, just a nicer product there or a different product there would be, I just think that's the way the town's moving. Most of the options we've gotten lately have offered things other than vinyl siding. They've offered other design standards, just more amenities, I feel like, in my opinion. So for me, based on what the attorney said, while I don't mind the annexation, I'm not in favor of the project in itself. So I would not be in favor of the annexation based on the fact that I would not be in favor of the rest of the project.
Commissioner Deloach, I'll just say that, you know, I was pretty quiet on it last time, just in conversation about it. It's kind of my thought that it's in keeping with the remainder of the current neighborhood, phases 1 and 2. So, yeah, I don't have any issue. It seems like they've tried to create a little higher standard than what is currently there. So I'm in favor of it, and I'm happy to make the motion now if there's no other comments.
Okay, are there any other comments? Do you have any comments from our virtual attendees?
Madam Mayor, I have one.
Okay.
Kind of to echo both Commissioner Lutz and Commissioner Boyette, you know, I echoed Commissioner Lutz last time when we had this conversation. I will say that Commissioner Boyette had a concern and Commissioner Lutz had a concern. My prediction would have been that Commissioner Lutz's concerns would have been addressed and Commissioner Boyette's likely would not have. I do see this as an extension of an existing neighborhood with Edgemont there. I think, you know, there is some good things in keeping some of those things similar, but with the addition of the raised monolithic slab, and while I certainly agree with Commissioner Lutz that some of the design features are certainly nice, I also understand the position that we're all in, and I'd be in favor of the project.
Anyone
That's all I
else?
have, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the non-contiguous annexation for 61.43 acres located on Edgemont Road.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the non-contiguous annexation for the 61 acres off of Edgemont Road. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, I'm going all in favor. Let's see. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Nay.
Commissioner Tarnasky?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
Okay, so that passes 4-1. All right, item 6B is a decision on a request by David Arnold of the Knoll Company to rezone approximately 70.43 acres of property along Edgemont Road to residential 4 conditional district for residential development. Mr. Jones again.
Good evening again. This item was heard also by the board on Monday, October 12th, 2020. Harmony Landing will feature 202 single-family homes on approximately 70 acres. As you know, the applicant is proposing to enter into the R4 Conditional Zoning District. One important thing to note here is that the UDO requires 8.1 acres and we're actually of open space, and we're actually getting 24.7 acres of open space. Important thing to note. And I will bypass much of this because I know you've heard it, but I will put the conditions in front of you again just to make sure that we're all clear on what the conditions are. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the board? I assume the applicant is good with all these conditions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions from the virtual attendees? Okay, I guess not. All right, I'm looking for a motion one way or the other, y'all.
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the request to rezone approximately 70.3 acres of property along Edgemont Road. Would you like me to identify the parcels?
Fantastic.
Parcels identified. PIN number 1775-519103. PIN number 1775-506528. PIN number 1775-605484. PIN number 1775-705201. PIN number 1775-714047. And PIN number 1775-705631 to a residential 4 R4 Conditional District for residential development.
All right, we have a motion to approve a request by David Arnold of the Knoll Company to rezone 70.43 acres, PIN numbers identified by Commissioner Deloach, to a residential 4 conditional district for residential development. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, Commissioner Joyner.
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz.
Nay.
Commissioner Tarnaski.
Nay.
Commissioner Boyette.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes 3-2. Item 6C is a decision on downtown service policies for parking, food trucks, electric vehicle charging, lighting, and solid waste service. And we're going to hear from Assistant to the Manager, Stephanie Smith. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here before you with final drafts of the policy and plans as we have been discussing the past 3 meetings. All of the changes that we have discussed have been incorporated into the draft plans before you tonight. I'm happy to split those out one by one for any additional questions or discussion, or if the board so chooses to adopt, they can all be adopted together as one. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, first, are there any questions from the board?
Commissioner Tarnaski,
Yes.
do we have any idea what the fees, talking about the truck fees?
Currently, there are not fees in the policy that will be adopted in each fiscal year. So it's written into the policy that would be adopted tonight, so any future fees would be captured in the fee policy with the budget each fiscal year.
Okay.
So we talk about that
Just
next
leaving it open.
spring, early summer. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
My only question was, I know we have, you mentioned here about signage for different things. Is there an idea of, is that what the signage is going to look like at this time yet, or is that still kind of a work in progress with parking signs and location signs and those kind of different things?
Any parking signs would be an operational implementation, and so we'd use our best practice in manual traffic design for signage and public parking and put up. Is the board interested in seeing typical designs prior to installation and where we'd be putting things to help inform the public? Because we'd be happy to do an informational. Otherwise, we'll proceed with implementation within our street sign budget that Public Works has. It's just a matter of course.
No, feel free to proceed. My curiosity was just
I
there.
think they're talking about like the P with the arrow, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, I get my only thought on the parking was still with the short-term parking. I know we discussed it a few times, but I would much rather us approach it from the standpoint of smaller steps and seeing how that did first, versus throwing in 6 15-minute parking signs, and that may be excessive, but versus, starting off with a couple and then seeing how that went from there.
Yeah,
That's my only thought. Otherwise, I think it's great.
correct. The direction we received on signs was to evaluate unmarked areas, to identify public parking and use signage to address it. Evaluate a couple close proximity, perhaps on corners, short-term parking, and evaluate accessibility for parking. And Commissioner Tarnasky gave us an example of a place to look for that. And so we'll be looking at just how to properly mark the space that we have, not really get into a lot of restrictive no parking or limited parking that would require additional enforcement staff and abilities beyond what we have. And then we'll, if that works for a period of time, then we'll evaluate annually or as directed by you and the public and move forward.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board?
Madam Mayor, I've got a couple.
Okay.
And this is for Stephanie or Mark. The food truck host requirement says located in Wendell to operate in the DMX. So this is purely for the DMX, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Does the sponsoring organization, business, or nonprofit have to be located within the DMX?
No, we did not specify that as part of the requirement. We just required that they be part of Wendell.
Okay. That seems broad, and I guess my comments would be, I certainly hope we don't find ourselves in a situation where food trucks who want to be downtown can't, and that it would be my intent that if this is not broad enough language, that we come back and address that in the future. But I certainly hope that, and this is the second time I've asked the question about how broad that language is, and hoping to keep it broad. Is there a feeling among staff of us, does staff understand my question?
Yes, so the feedback that we received previously was there was an interest in indicating that the host would be associated or part of Wendell. We intentionally did not specify has to be within town limits specifically. That's to avoid a host from, a neighboring municipality or another jurisdiction who we wouldn't be able to regulate bringing in a food truck. But with any of these policies or plans, the goal is to start somewhere and then evaluate and make adjustments as needed, whether that means to become more or less restrictive, whichever would be in the best interest of the community and would be following the direction of the board.
Thank you, ma'am. That leads me to my next question. The language around generators says the use of generators are required if food trucks are not connected to a power source provided by the town. Have we, and I think I know the answer to this question, but we do not currently provide a power source, correct?
The power is not yet activated in the downtown area, no. It ultimately will be, yes. So we will be providing 3 different power source areas once that electricity is activated.
So I did a little little bit of a science experiment in attempting to procure a quote quiet generator. This is kind of like high-speed internet. Your mileage may vary. There's a variety of definitions, and there's not, at least from what I can find, a unilateral industry standard as what is defined as a quiet generator. There's also, from what I learned, a variety of ways to achieve quiet generation or quiet power generation, which can include having what we would refer to as a loud generator and encapsulating that into something else, or putting a box around it. I would feel a lot better with the language as originally written, which said is strongly encouraged, and any noise produced by food trucks may not be disruptive. So I'm going to land on the generator, the same place that I landed on another conversation about windows and window tinting. We already have a rule. It's easiest for law enforcement to enforce the rule that's there. I certainly think that we can encourage it. I think that we can explain it to everyone that this is what we're looking for. But I think it's a really hard thing to mandate, and I certainly, if there was a quote, if there was an easy way to procure something that you knew could be implemented, and as far as a quiet generator, if you just knew if there was two different types when you went to the store, but that's just not the case. So I would be a lot more comfortable with is strongly encouraged, which was that original language, until we get to a place where we are actually providing power. And in that scenario, I feel like we will have solved the problem. But it seems like right now we're singling out a group of people or creating confusion until we have the power established.
When will the power be connected?
To clarify, the town does have power in other places around downtown. The power that's not connected are the food truck hookup points in the East Campton Road project. We're still waiting on a schedule from Duke to take down the power, underground the power, hook up the street lights, and energize the car charging / food truck chargers.
Do you have an idea approximately about when you think this is going to happen?
No, but I'm sure Marty Clayton from Duke Power will let me know as soon as he hears, which is the email exchanges the last couple of weeks. I don't have an exact date right now.
Okay. I see where Commissioner Joyner's coming from, but I also feel like it's dangerous to have a rule and then change a rule, and I think within the, see how it goes, because I think that in itself creates confusion. I think if we define what we want to have happen, then people will know. And I think most food trucks now do have the quiet generators, and they do know what that means. And in the food truck world, they know what that means, and they are able to obtain those. And I don't know that it's as big a deal as all that, but I certainly don't want to make it hard for people to participate down there. But I don't think it's that big of a deal for them either. So
to clarify, if the words "not disruptive" were added to the quiet generator requirement, that would allow staff to have some latitude until we could secure that electric hookup. I think that kind of addresses both points raised, but it wouldn't require coming back to the board for a change for
down
that
the road.
specific.
That's what I mean. I don't want to have to make a
Yeah, I mean,
figure something out and then change it, and figure something out and change it.
if the town electricity is available, it's required. If not, a quiet generator that's not disruptive, and that gives the latitude to Commissioner Joyner's point, but wouldn't require coming back.
Right.
I got a question, Commissioner Tarnaski.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to maybe decide what decibel level, and you get meters that can read that can enforce it by a certain level,
And hearing Commissioner Tarnaski brings me back to the point I was going to make, which was, I think, just tying it to our noise ordinance is a reasonable current measure that law enforcement is already used to enforcing. if it's good for the other places. I understand the ultimate goal, and ultimately I want everybody to plug up so that it's a completely quiet space. But just from the enforceability piece, I think, if I'm reading the policy and I see I have to have a quiet generator, at least that other language gives me enough reason to call and, maybe explore it before I just don't come. For instance, Cousin's Maine Lobster does not have a quiet generator, and talking to them.
Commissioner Deloach, at the end of the day, we still reserve the right to revoke privileges, so I think we have coverage for what's reasonable in the event that we need it.
Okay, so what do y'all want to do? You want to adopt,
Stephanie, can you comment about the latitude the policy provides for the manager's interpretation? Because that might address some of the Commissioner Joyner and I think Deloach's point, and also with the enforcement, that it gives some latitude of staff to be able to address a case-by-case. The Catholic Church International Food Festival isn't on Campen Street at the plug-in, and so some things are handled through special event permits that have food trucks. Commissioner Joyner, you had asked about kind of that safety valve being written into the policy, and perhaps she can talk about that, and that might alleviate your concerns.
I did add a line to the policy. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I see that last line, and I certainly appreciate it. I was trying to prevent future headaches for you in using that last line.
The last line of the policy just indicates that the town manager has the authority to make special exceptions. So there is some wiggle room there for specific conditions related to any part of the policy. But we're happy to make any adjustments to the policy the board would ask, and if they choose to adopt it with those adjustments.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the policy or to not approve it? What do y'all want to do?
I don't know how the others feel, but I would appreciate the additional language around generators until we solve that problem.
Oh, you mean the additional language that the manager was referring to earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is that in the form of a motion?
Certainly.
Okay, I think there's a delay. Okay, Mr. Collins, can you give us that language again? We've had a lot of conversation.
Yeah, just confirm what.
Yeah, let's confirm, make sure we all have it.
So the amended wording would be the use of quiet generators are required to be non-disruptive if food trucks are not connected to a power source provided by the town. So it's the addition of that not disruptive language without specifying a particular decibel.
Okay. All right, and we do have a motion, is that correct, Commissioner Joyner? Is that you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. To approve the decision, to approve the downtown service policy for parking, food trucks, electric vehicle charging, lighting, and solid waste service. All right, Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. Let's move into Section 7, Other Business. 7A is update on board committees by town board members. First one is Campo. That's mine. Last week, I virtually attended Campo again. For some reason, they're unable to hear me. I'm having a problem with my WebEx, so I have to text in, but I'm there. We held a public hearing on amendment number 3 to fiscal year 2029 Transportation Improvement Plan. Held a public hearing on the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Amendment for Air Quality Conformity Determination. Held a public hearing for Wake Bus Rapid Transit, the Western Corridor locally preferred alternative. We had Campo projects and funding updates, and were asked to consider action on LAP fiscal year 2022 projects submittal policy. We had a presentation about the fiscal year 2020 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment number 1. Heard a presentation on Triangle Bikeway Study. Received information on the 2020 operating budget. Received information on the Executive Board project updates. Received information on public engagement. They're making a tremendous effort to engage with the public, especially right now during the pandemic. And we received a series of staff reports for various projects around Wake County and the metropolitan area. All right, the next one is the Eastern Wake Senior Center, Commissioner Deloach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Auxiliary Board meeting took place on the 15th. That meeting was held virtually. Handful of business items that they went through. Fundraiser, sold 120 takeout plates. They had various donations and contributions. They were able to raise about $1,600 plus. That number's still growing, so that was great. They're actually partnering with local restaurants to raise money, proceeds. Actually tonight until 9 o'clock, you still have time, head over to Zaxby's in Knightdale. Off the Hook in Rollsville coming up November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and McLean's in Zebulon November 9th, 10th, and 11th. Again, they'll be donating proceeds. Annual craft auction will be held on November 13th. That will be from 3 o'clock till 4:30. It will be a drive-through event held in the parking lot. Lots of great crafts. I know that our family's bought some dog bandanas in the past, so lots of cool stuff. Go check that out. Finally, there were 3 new board members that were approved. Brings the total to 13 members. So big thank you to each of those members for their time and their talents. So in spite of COVID, still lots of great things going on in and around the senior center here in Wendell.
All right, thank you. We'll move to item number 8 now, our commissioners' reports, and we'll start with Commissioner Joyner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wanted to reemphasize some things. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and I phrased the last one as just stay away from people, but stay 6 feet apart. I generally just keep your space. It's the most conservative, no-nonsense version of not spreading germs that I'm aware of. I apologize for my not being there this evening. I'm in Asheboro because sickness is real and it impacts families all the time. And I am here with my wife as it impacts hers. The other thing, last time we met, I encouraged everyone to do all the things that I just listed for a different reason, and that's because I really want John Boyette sitting back beside me in the board meetings. I've missed that for the last several months. Another thing that I missed in my comments last month was congratulating Mayor Pro Tem / Commissioner Boyette on being Captain Boyette now. He was promoted at the, I guess, October-ish, since I didn't catch it. But high honor and certainly deserved. Very proud of our colleague who continues to advance in his hometown fire department. It's very cool to look at him tonight and see the captain on his shirt. And Madam Mayor, that's all I have for this evening.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Deloach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One final thing, I just want to encourage folks to get out and vote. Last day to early vote is this coming Saturday. 3 p.m. is that deadline. Of course, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. So tons of folks put in a lot of time and effort into the process, so make sure you get out and exercise your right. And also, while you're at the polls, as a courtesy, something I like to do, take the time to thank your poll workers. Lots of stress, anxiety, long hours go into that, so just make sure you show them some love while you're there. Valerie and I voted last week. We ran it out in about 15 minutes, so if you think it's going to take too long, there are lots of options close by, so check those out. You can go to the Board of Elections website for those. I've also got them listed on the Deloach for Wendell Facebook page, so go vote.
All right. Commissioner Lutz?
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment for tonight is just looking forward towards kind of this weekend, with it being a Halloween weekend. I know that some people will experience it a little different than others this year because of COVID and regulations. I just ask citizens, if they choose to go out trick-or-treating, that is wonderful. Be safe. Also be respectful of other people still. Be respectful of people maybe who chose not to participate in their usual way this year as they may have in the past. But just to be safe, just to be mindful of others, and to just have a good time. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Good evening, Mayor and Town Board. I'd like to just bring up one thing that's been getting a lot of phone calls from town residents. Maybe we can add to our agenda sometime to reevaluate our yard waste program. After the months we've been doing it now, I kind of gave it a little bit of time, and I haven't had actually any positive feedback. I mean, I understand it's good for leaves, grass, pine cones, and small things like that, but when you start cutting up limbs and trees, I can see the problem getting them in there, especially for our seniors and handicapped people of Wendell. We haven't really thought about how are we going to help them, and maybe we can, get out there and pick it up maybe 6 times a year or something, reevaluate and see what we can come up with to help out the town residents and get it on the next year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyette.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Joyner for the kind words. I do appreciate it. Yes, it was quite an honor to be promoted here at the fire department, and I am enjoying it. Fire department continues to grow. We recently said goodbye to a longtime firefighter, Wayne Withrow, who served here for close to 20 years. Did an outstanding job. Absolutely will be missed. But with his leaving, it means we've hired a new firefighter, Stephen Montague. Excellent credentials, and as always, time marches on. Also had the pleasure of voting early. I waited a little bit longer, and I stood in a little bit more rain than most other people did, I think. But it was overall a pleasant experience and handled very well by the people at Zebulon, and I was glad to go ahead and vote. I only wish that by early voting I could rid my mailbox of the reams of flyers that I continue to receive in the hours and hours of political ads that accost my TV. The pandemic continues. If you haven't been personally touched by it yet, consider yourself extremely lucky. I've lost count of the number of people at this point that I know that have either contracted it or had close family members that have gotten sick from it. It is its highest numbers it has been in a long time. I just want to remind everyone again, wash your hands, wear a mask, social distance. Everybody knows what you have to do at this point. So I just want to pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I want to echo congratulations to you on your promotion. That's fantastic. We're proud of you. I want to thank our local Wendell Girl Scout troop for inviting me to speak to them a week or so ago. They're working on their democracy badge and requested that I come and discuss with them some things about jobs in local government, local elections, trends and changes in voter turnout that I may have noticed, and to answer some questions. The timing, we're all kind of worn out on elections right now. The timing was very good, though, and it actually gave me a lot of faith in our future, which things right now are very contentious in the world around elections, but this was a really great conversation that we all had. There were 7 girls there, and we were all spread out in the town square. If anybody went by, they probably wondered what in the world was going on, because we were way spread out. And I had to talk really loud, but they could hear me. They were polite and bright, and they asked wonderful questions and made great observations. And they shared a lot of things with me that we discussed, and I feel very good about our future after having spoken with them. I'm sure they are going to do great things, and I'm confident that they have bright futures. I want to remind everybody too of what Commissioner Luge said tonight, to be courteous about trick-or-treating this weekend. I've had a lot of calls and emails and phone calls and text messages, are we canceling Halloween? Well, it's not in our purview to do that. If you don't want to have trick-or-treaters come to your house, you can just go back to the old-fashioned, turn your lights off and your porch light off, just like we've always done if you didn't want to participate in Halloween. If you don't want to take your children trick-or-treating, you don't have to. If you do go, I'd like to remind you to please, this year there'll probably be more people than normal that are not participating, so be courteous and give them a little bit of grace. You don't know what's going on in their lives that they're choosing not to participate this year, and we need to be courteous of them for that. So no tricking, just get some treats, no tricking this year. I also want to remind everybody to do the things that they need to do. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. Our numbers are okay. I won't be happy until they're gone, until it's completely gone. We check it. I'm sure all of us check it every single day. I wait until noon and check vigilantly every single day. The death rate seems to have evened out, but there is more testing going on, so the numbers are rising due to increased testing. For a lot of people, you do not have the need to be frozen in fear, because I think a lot of people are, and I don't want you to feel that way. I want you to just be aware of what can happen and make smart decisions and be vigilant. And I think that everyone knows how to do that. Make good decisions for your health, wear the mask, stay far apart from people, and wash your hands. And I think that is, I feel like we just keep preaching it and preaching it and preaching it, and then I keep getting told that I'm not saying it enough, so I'm saying it again. Please just remember those rules, and particularly remember them on Halloween, and there's a lot of things coming up in the next few months that are going to be very exciting, and it's going to be difficult for us to remember our vigilance, and we need to, particularly during that time, do that. But especially if your kids get all jacked up on chocolate on Halloween, so keep them with you. Don't let them run ahead and things like that. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned.